Yo, what's going on, gamers? Poontan Gaming here. Right before we start this video, hit the comment section below, like and subscribe, and comment down below why you think Paul George got traded to the OKC Thunder. Let's start off from the Pacers' perspective. Why did Pittsrod trade him to OKC just for Victor Oladipo, and Domantas Sabonis, who's a second-year player, and we don't know if he's going to be great. Why? Because they don't want to trade a superstar to another great team in their own conference. It makes sense completely. Why would they want to trade a superstar to almost a super team, kind of a super team, a mini super team in Cleveland to make it a big four? Why would you want to do that? That is dumb. Even though they had a Denver Nuggets deal on the table for Kevin Love going to Denver and a bunch of assets going to Pacers, which would have been more valuable than Depot and Sabonis. Doesn't make sense for most people, but if you look, Jimmy Butler got traded to the T-Wolves for basically nothing. Zach LaVine coming off an ACL injury, and also I think Chris Dunn, who I think is a bust. Chris Dunn's terrible. Chris Dunn is not good. As a T-Wolves fan, Chris Dunn's garbage. And that's why they don't want to put a great player on a great team in their own conference. So why not just trade him to the West to meet a mediocre team, a good team, because of Russell Westbrook, the MVP of this year's season, put him next to him, and why don't they just do that and they don't suffer as much of a backfire? So now, let's look at the side why OKC did it. OKC got to dump Depot's contract, which was terrible, and they don't have to wait to develop Paul George because he's already a beast. And even though if it's a rental, they have cap space now. Presti is a magnificent bastard, you have to admit. The cap space possibility might be even more valuable than resigning George, by which I mean the Thunder would suddenly have flexibility to make moves and cap space to do it. If Paul George leaves, we have his cap space to do something instead of being restrained from doing anything due to Depot's contract, or we trade him at the deadline for assets. Either way, we have options where there were none. This trade for Paul George is a rather atypical for Presti, given that he knows the difficulty of attracting players to OKC. This magnified by Paul George's intent to go to Los Angeles, pretty much the polar opposite of OKC. Everyone is assuming this is a one-year rental, but I would actually think of Paul George as a trade asset this coming season. Presti has always been protective of his assets, and his actions as GM have always been to get value for players instead of letting them walk, with the exception of Kevin Durant, of course. Imagine Presti now flipping Paul George by the coming trade deadline to a team like Boston and getting both cost control young starting caliber players and a high draft pick. I think this is the long-term play for OKC to restock their roster with enough young talent to convince Westbrook to stay and build a contender. Even though I think Westbrook will just stay forever because he doesn't want to be hated like Kevin Durant, unless like in his later years, like after he's played like 12, 14 seasons in OKC, and he's just like, I just want a fucking ring. Even though you guys giving me all this, I'm just going to leave for a ring, which would make sense because, you know, become a ring chaser. I don't know if Russell Westbrook is like that, but you know, that's always a potential. Or maybe at the trade deadline they trade Paul George for Kevin Love, OKC, and they have a UCLA reunion, because after this season I think Kevin Love will have this one more year, and Kevin Love would definitely stay again in OKC, and he'd be a perfect complementary player for Steven Adams, who can't shoot, but is great defender. Kevin Love would be the stretch guy, he can be the other offensive guy, Russell Westbrook can kick out to him. And then they can also have the shooting guard and small forward position probably filled up with like Iman Shumpert or J.R. Smith or something wild like that. It'd be really interesting to see, but those are the two reasons why Paul George got traded. One, the Pacers didn't want him to be traded into the East, just like Jimmy Butler. They didn't want to keep a player of that type of caliber in the East to another team where they would have to compete with them all the time and have to be worried. So they traded him to the East for a shitty deal, and then the OKC Thunder did it, so they have a chance to maybe flip him for some assets at the trade deadline if things don't go to plan, or to become contenders. It's just a great deal for Presti because they got rid of a terrible contract, and they also got rid of a terrible contract, and they traded the player that they got in the original deal for that terrible contract. Excuse my cough. That was disgusting. But Tell me down below, guys, if you guys enjoyed this video, what your thoughts on it. Comment down below. Leave a like, guys. As always, I hope you guys have a great day, because I know I will. Till next time, guys. Peace out.